Hello and welcome back to yet another episode on the Alejandro Hernandez podcast. This is going to be part 4 of my 8-episode series. This is going to wrap up my NFC standings predictions. I'm going to be doing the NFC South today. I've done the NFC East, the North, and the West. And this is going to be the final part of the NFC. I'm doing the NFC South. And then after this video, we'll transition into the AFC. So without further ado, let's get into this prediction. It's going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Atlanta Falcons, the Saints, and the Panthers, who we're going to be talking about today. And coming in last place, I'm going to have the New Orleans Saints. I believe this is a no-brainer. This is kind of consensus around the league that the Saints are going to be among the worst teams in the NFL. They drafted Tyler Shuck in the second round just to not even start him out the gate of the season. They saw him play in the preseason, weren't really necessarily impressed with his performance. It was a QB battle in training camp between Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck, and the 25-year-old rookie lost that battle to Spencer Rattler. So the Saints decided to start Spencer Rattler this season. They have Chris Olave, who has a ton of concussion issues. Not really sure if he's going to play the full 17-game season. It's really unfortunate because he's one of the more talented receivers that came out of Ohio State recently, and his career has kind of been derailed due to concussions. Then Rashid Shaheed is also coming off a torn ACL. Other than that, they have an aging Alvin Kamara, and their offensive line is pretty young and inexperienced, not probably one of the lower units in the NFL. They drafted Kelvin Banks 9th overall this year. He's going to be a great tackle, but the other 4 positions on the offensive line are a weakness for the Saints. So, especially because Spencer Rattler's not probably among the bottom 3 or 2 quarterbacks in the league, so he's not a quarterback that's going to elevate the talent around him. And they have a new head coach, Kellen Moore. Not really sure how this offense is going to operate given the talent that he has to work with. Kellen Moore, as an offensive coordinator, is going from Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith to this kind of a train wreck of an offense here run by Spencer Rattler. So really expectations are bottom right now for the New Orleans Saints. The consensus belief is that they're tanking for Arch Manning next season or the year after that. They're just going to suck this season and then go from there. They've been in dead cap for over the past 5 years because of all the expensive contracts they had with Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore, Drew Brees. Just that whole era of Saints football ended, and now they're kind of back into this turmoil of football post Drew Brees. So yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to have the Saints coming in last place in the NFC South, probably in contention for one of the worst teams in the NFL. Finishing with around 3 to 4 wins this season. I don't really see them winning any more games other than that with Spencer Rattler at quarterback. Now let's move on to third place team. I'm going to have the Carolina Panthers coming in third place. And I love their quarterback. I kind of like their head coach, Dave Canales. He was able to kind of unlock Bryce Young towards the end of last season. Bryce Young really did turn a corner in terms of his processing. Obviously his numbers improved. He was able to contend with really good teams. He contended with the Chiefs, contended with the Eagles, beat the Falcons, beat the Cardinals. So Bryce Young had some really impressive performances down the stretch of last season. But overall, I just don't think this roster is quite ready to compete for playoff contention yet. I still believe they have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They made some additions this offseason to kind of, I guess, work towards improving that defense, but it's not enough. They brought in Trayvon Moehrig from the Raiders, a safety on a $3 or $50 million contract. He's one of the better safeties in the NFL. And other than that, I guess they had one addition on the defensive line. They're getting Derrick Brown back, which is huge from injury. He's one of the best, if not the best, run-stopping defensive linemen in the NFL. But across, they have J.C. Horn as well, who's one of the better corners in the NFL. They have some nice cornerstone pieces to this team on their defense, Derrick Brown, J.C. Horn. But other than that, their whole defensive unit as a whole is among the bottom in the NFL. So I think that there's still some work to do with this roster. There's still some years to come. Bryce is still on his rookie contract. They drafted Ted McMillan in the first round, which is a great move in my opinion. You got to get Bryce some weapons, and they went out and did that. So now you got Ted McMillan, Xavier Legette, Tommy Tremble, and then in the backfield they have Chuba Hubbard, who's pretty good. Offensive line did improve over the course of this Bryce Young era. It's gotten better and better over time. But overall, I'd say that the Panthers are not quite ready yet to contend for the playoffs. So I'm going to have them finishing around 6 to 7 wins this season, around 6-11, 7-10. They do play one of the easier schedules in the NFL, but I just don't think that's going to matter. I think they're still among one of the worst teams in the NFC, not ready to compete yet with the big leagues or the big contenders in the NFC, so I'm going to have them finishing third place in the NFC South. Now let's move on to second place. This has kind of been a hard team to rank. I have the Atlanta Falcons in second place in the NFC South, but it's honestly really close as to whether I'm going to have them in the playoffs or just kind of in that, I believe they're in that range of 8 to 9 wins, because I do believe in Michael Penix. I believe in their weapons. They have great weapons. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, Bijan Robinson, a good offensive line. They did lose their right tackle, Caleb McCary, I believe his name is. That's a big loss for them. But overall, I love their offensive talent. I love the potential that Michael Penix showed in the 3 games he played down the stretch of last season. So I am excited to watch Michael Penix this season. Their defense is pretty good. They addressed their pass rush this offseason, bringing in James Pierce, and I forget the other player they drafted. His name, it's a linebacker, I believe it's Jalon Walker, who they drafted first, then they proceeded to draft James Pierce, trading up to get James Pierce. Their biggest weakness last season was their pass rush. They did address that this offseason. They did get 8 wins despite that whole Kirk Cousins situation last year that they had, where they had to bench him because of how bad he was playing. They started the year 6-3, and I think Atlanta is one of those teams that could creep into the playoffs, but I have them quite just missing out. They're going to be in the mix with Washington, Seattle, and the Bears for that number 7 seed in the NFC, but I have them slightly missing out just due to them not being quite ready to compete with those teams yet. So I'm going to have the Falcons finishing around 8 to 9 wins, barely missing out on the playoffs, is where I'm going to have Atlanta this season, finishing second place in the NFC South, and coming in first place is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My expectations are sky high for this football team. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans running it back, their whole defense running it back with Levante David on one of his last runs, but he's still playing at a very high level. This whole team is very experienced. They've been to the playoffs back-to-back seasons, back-to-back NFC South champions. Baker Mayfield, I believe, is going to take another step up in his career. He had a career year last season, throwing for 40 touchdowns and over 4,500 yards. And I believe Baker is great. And they had a crushing defeat last year in a home playoff game to the Washington Commanders, but I believe they will be right back in the mix. I believe they're going to be a top 2 seed in the NFC this season, in contention for the number 1 seed, just due to their schedule. They play one of the very easiest schedules in the NFL, and they play in the softest division in the NFL, which benefits them a lot. I believe they could possibly go 6-0 against their division, maybe 5-1. Maybe they split with Atlanta, but they do sweep the Saints and the Panthers, in my opinion. And I love the team. I love the organization. I love the culture they've established in that building. They know that they run the NFC South, and they're going to continue to run the NFC South for years to come. And I believe they're going to be one of the top NFC contenders this season. I love the addition of Emeka Egbuka. I've kind of flipped my mind on that. And in my mock draft recap, I had the Buccaneers as one of the worst graded first round picks for taking Emeka Egbuka. Not because I didn't like the player, but just because of that crowded receiver room. You have so many other needs in your defense that why would you go in and throw in a 4th wide receiver into the mix on your offense? Well, now you look at the injuries that they've had coming into this season. No Chris Godwin to start the year, and now no Jalen McMillan, who got injured in the preseason. So that immediately plummets, or I should say propels Emeka Egbuka to wide receiver 2 in the offense, and I have very high expectations for him. I've drafted him in all my fantasy leagues. I believe Emeka Egbuka is going to be one of the breakout candidates this season as a wide receiver. And I love the receiver room, love the running back room with Bucky Irving, have a plus offensive line, a top 10 quarterback in my opinion with Baker Mayfield, a fringe top 10. I think he's around that 10 to 12 range. He could take a step higher this season. They have a good defense. Todd Bowles is a defensive coach. I love this team. They're going to rule this division. I believe they're going to have 11 to 12 wins this season and be in contention for one of the top 2 seeds in the NFC. So that is going to be it for my predictions. Let's just quickly summarize everything I'm going to have. Coming in last place, the New Orleans Saints being around the dumpster fire of the NFL, tanking for Arch Manning this season, around 3 to 4 wins. Then coming in third place, I'm going to have the Carolina Panthers finishing around 6-11 to 7-10. Kind of similar to the Giants, where they're going to show some hope this season, show some promise, but they're not quite ready to compete for playoff contention. Coming in second place, a fringe, kind of frisky team in the NFC, the Atlanta Falcons. I believe it's possible they have a winning record this season. I have a lot of faith in Michael Penix. However, they just miss out in the playoffs, in contention with Washington, with the Seahawks, with the 49ers. Teams like that in contention for the number 7 seed in the NFC. They just quite missed the cut. And coming in first place, a top two seed in the NFC, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that is going to be it for this video, and I will see you guys next time for when I reveal my AFC standings predictions. But until then, I will see you guys next time.